Hello, I'm Eric Holdeman. Welcome to Disaster Zone, a show about emergencies and disasters that can happen anywhere and anytime. Is your vote secure? Just how safe is our election system from hackers and others who might want to disrupt our democratic processes? So how do we protect this critical infrastructure? Well, we're going to find out here with the King County Elections Director, Julie Wise. And Julie, thanks for coming to be on the show. I think it's very timely to be here on this election season that we're in. So thank you for coming on.
Happy to be here.
All right. So most people, they know they vote, they know somebody counts the votes, but tell us something about your department, what the size, location, it's a pretty complex organization that you run.
It is. So King County Elections is the actually largest vote by mail county in the entire country.
Okay.
We're the 13th largest county in the country, and we have 1.3 million registered voters here in King County. King County Elections conducts elections for all 191 jurisdictions within King County. And we're, of course, vote by mail, have been since 2009. So we have over 60 ballot drop boxes across King County. We are now officially a prepaid postage county as well. I've got about 65 permanent employees, and we'll hire about 800 temporary employees for a presidential election. Compared to 8,000 poll workers when we had polls, it still is actually not that many for us.
Okay, about a tenth of the workforce. Still sounds like a lot.
It does.
Though.
And we're located in Renton. We actually have a beautiful state-of-the-art facility in Renton that we moved into about a decade ago. Yeah. And we also have an office here in Seattle at the King County Administration Building.
It's been 11 years since I left King County, but I remember elections was spread out over multiple locations, and that was a difficult issue back then.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was to our detriment to have 4 different locations. Yeah. I remember we would actually have to have ballots in a van, and then we'd have to be flanked by the security or sheriff's office actually following us from location to location. It's hard to manage staff. It's hard to manage ballots and processes when we were separated like that. So the council provided us a really great facility located in Renton.
Are you concerned about voter fraud here in King County or the United States? Because people say, well, we don't know who's voting. So what about voter fraud per se?
Absolutely. I am confident in our voter rolls here in King County and in Washington State. And the reason why is because especially over the last 12 years, we've really done a great job of making sure our voter rolls are clean and up to date. And how we're doing that is we're scrubbing that data basically with a dozen some other resources and agencies. So we get information regularly from Social Security Administration, from obituaries, Department of Health in regards to voters that have passed or deceased voters so that we can remove them from the voter rolls. We also get information to update voters' addresses or signatures from the Department of Licensing, address information from the United States Postal Service. We get information from the courts for felons. So there's a lot of different information that we're sharing. We get information from counties across the state and across the country, as well as from the Secretary of State's office. So there's a lot of points in which we're collecting data and making sure that our voter rolls are up to date.
Certainly, this I mentioned, in my interactions with people, they'll bring up, and I was born and raised in Illinois, and there was always accusation about dead people in Cook County, Chicago voting. And I've heard that same type of accusation for King County here from other, anonymous sources. And just the process you described there, I mean, how ironclad is that you're confident? You talked about some of these processes. You're not doing this just at the time of elections. Your permanent staff are doing this year-round.
It's a year-round process. The Secretary of State's office actually holds the official voter rolls for Washington State. So they're ensuring that we don't have duplicate voters and, again, deceased voters on our rolls. We're going an extra step in looking at obituaries on a daily basis to also clean up those voter rolls. But in order to vote and vote by mail, we get signatures from voters. So that signature has to match the signature that's on file for that voter. And also, there's a hefty fine if you do illegally register or vote. You're looking at $10,000, 5 years in prison, and a felony. So it's not something to mess around with.
Okay, so if you go to court, bring your toothbrush, as they say.
That's right. That's right. It's going to be a long stay. And I will say that in my 15 years of elections experience, we have not processed prosecuted someone for committing voter fraud.
Okay.
So I am confident, and I hope that voters and citizens in King County can feel confident in the system, because we worked really hard over the last decade.
And I know you interact across the nation with other people, your peers, even other state secretaries of state and that. And I remember that there was a national commission established on voter fraud, basically, and then that was disbanded. So as I understand it, just nationally, the level of voter fraud is not what some people would say it is.
I think that that's true. I mean, I definitely think there's a lot of states in the country that are doing the same sort of work that we're doing here in Washington State. Yeah. I think there's some states that are still getting on board. One of the things that Washington State is a part of is a group of 25 states across the country that compare voter data rolls to each other to ensure that we don't have voters registered in multiple states. It would be great to see the other states get on board and to be able to compare that data. But I think we'll see that as we move forward with elections.
Tighten up the system.
Yes.
Well, the other big thing that's in the news, remaining in the news, was in the news, certainly from the past election, is how confident are you, to the best of your knowledge, that there hasn't been any Russian influence into the King County voting system, whether we'll talk about tabulating votes, but certainly the voter roll was the other piece.
Great, I like that, because I'll stay in my lane here. I won't speak to the interference of social media or advertising.
No, we're just talking about voter.
But voting rolls, absolutely. Secretary Wyman has disclosed to all of us that Washington State was one of 21 states where Russian hackers attempted to hack our voter registration system in 2016. And I say attempted because it was not successful. And of course, they are monitoring that information and that accessing of the voter registration rolls all the time. And we're doing the same in King County. So we know in King County, not election specific, but King County government, that every day there's attempts. And our firewalls are working and the system's working. Of course, we have to remain vigilant. And those attacks get smarter. And as they get smarter, our barriers and have to get stronger as well. So we learn a lot as we go. But at this point, there has not been any successful hacking of voter registration rolls or data in Washington State or in King County.
That's great to hear.
Yes.
Everybody wants their vote to count, and they don't want it balanced against some other aspect there. You seem like a very nice person. You actually came to Spokane and spoke at a election security event, so I've heard you speak before about. You're very well informed. What is your personal experience as elections official?
Yeah, so I've actually been working in elections. It's been my day job and my passion for over 15 years. I actually started in 2000 as a temporary election worker. I was answering the phones to help voters find their polling places at that time. And ever since then, in the last 15 or plus years, I've worked in every capacity there in elections. If it's from opening ballots to doing geographical information, to building ballots, voter pamphlets. I've been the front row staff, frontline staff. I've been a supervisor, a manager, and I was a deputy before I ran for office, and I was elected by 72% of the votes in 2015, becoming the elected director of elections, which is a mouthful. I'm also a Washington State and a nationally certified election administrator.
And how do you get certified?
Sure. So certification for the state is that you have to be an election administrator for at least 2 years. You have to have several hours of, I believe it's 45 hours of training, and then you have to keep that training up 20 hours every single year of elections training, and you have to pass a test. Nationally, it took several years. It takes a lot of courses. They're actually college-credited courses through Auburn University, where election administrators from across the country gather together regularly. In fact, at the end of this month, I'll be headed to New Orleans for the conference as well to talk about how best to protect elections. And election security, of course, is a hot topic there.
Is there such a thing, I'm thinking about emergency management, you can get accredited as an organization. Is there such a thing for elections at all, to be accredited as an elections organization?
There's not an accredited that I'm aware of, but there is, of course, again, the national certification is called CIRA, and so that is the program that I've gone through. And we have accreditation looking at our tabulation and election equipment through the federal, but not anything is sort of accrediting an office or a person at this point.
And you talked about some of this how you have outside looking at you, Secretary of State, what type of audits happen on a regular basis?
Right. So just in the last 3 years, we've had 4 audits. So every 5 years, the Secretary of State's office goes to the different counties across the 39 counties across Washington State, and they do a review of that election offices, and we had ours in 2015, are following all of the hundreds and hundreds of state and federal laws and codes. So we had that in 2015, and then this last year we've undergone 3 other audits, 2 of them at my request, one through the Department of Homeland Security to look at the physical security of the elections building, the other through the state auditor's office to look at cybersecurity, and then we had the King County auditor had elections up for this year, and they looked at our actual processes.
Well, that's when you have that many eyeballs looking at you, you'll know whether you've got it all wired together or not. But you mentioned the Department of Homeland Security, and I know the protective security advisors who do those physical inspections that it was early in 2017 that elections nationally was made part of our critical infrastructure system under the category of government. Do you think that was a good idea?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I think that what that really reaffirms to us is how core our democratic processes and how much we need to protect our electoral process in the United States. And so I absolutely support that, and I think it was a wise decision.
We're going to get more into depth coming up here, talk about physical security precautions, but what types of security systems are there protecting the vote? Let's start from a physical security aspect.
Sure. From a physical security aspect, we're really fortunate again to have a state-of-the-art facility that was specifically designed for elections, which a lot of election offices do not have across the state or across the country. So we had a building that was completely designed and created for elections. And so we have over 20 24/7 security cameras that monitor King County Elections facility. We also have 6 web cameras. If you'd like to sit from the comfort of your home and watch us hard at work, you can certainly do that. We also literally have a loop that is transparent. It is a 1/5 of a mile loop that is.
So it's a walking loop.
It's a walking loop open for everyone, open to the public to come and watch us actually process ballots. And so it has plexiglass, and so you're able to watch all of those election processes happening. We have security layers upon security layers. In fact, we had one of the consultants to create the security worked for casinos. So we have badge access readers. We also have biometric access readers.
And what type of biometrics do you fingerprint, eyes, fingerprint?
Fingerprint. And so you have to have the combination of course, your badge with the matching fingerprint. We also do seals, and those seals are numbered, and they have to be broken by a pair of 2 employees. All ballots have to be maintained by 2 employees at the same time. And then we have the people component too, which I think is really important. We have a citizen election oversight committee that the elections office has had for about 15 years. And we have observers. So we have party observers or candidate or campaign observers that are literally on the floor watching the election process. We train them, and then they are really there with their eyes on it to make sure too. And so there's a lot of components of physical security that we have with elections.
So they're inside the loop, if you will.
Yes, they are.
Right there watching people do their duty, duties. And this, I'll call it the transparency loop. What do you call that loop?
The loop.
The loop. All right, sounds like the loop in Chicago. The train goes through. But anybody can come, walk in and do that. Do they have to go through security to get inside?
They'll come to our check-in room, and we'll make sure to get them a badge. It's another aspect of our physical security. Everyone is badged and has a lanyard that has a certain color. If they're media, there's a certain color. If it's an observer, it's an orange color. So they can come in and they can give themselves a self-guided tour, but we are always happy to provide tours. We take a lot of senior citizen community groups, youth, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, all that.
Not everybody's on the internet. What's the address for your facility in Renton?
Sure. So we are at 919 Southwest Grady Way, and we're open 8:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday.
And every day they can come look.
Yes.
But there's a whole lot more going on the days leading up to and then on election day. And probably after election day.
Absolutely. The 3 weeks around election, the week before election, the week of election, and the week after is going to be the most exciting.
Okay, to see activity going on.
Yes.
Well, we've covered a lot, but we've got a lot more to cover. And for you folks at home, we're going to be coming back. We're going to talk more about not just the physical security, but the cyber security of King County elections. So stay tuned, watch this message, and we'll be right back after this break.
So I've come up with a family emergency plan.
Great. What is it?
It's difficult to talk about, so I'm not telling you.
How will we know what to do?
You won't.
I'm so glad I won't have to remember anything.
And me too. Thanks for this, sweetie.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Welcome back, and if you're just joining us, today we're talking with King County Elections Director Julie Wise, and we're talking about the security of our King County election system. And early in the show, we talked about the physical security, and there's a lot, all this badging and biometrics and cameras everywhere. But let's talk about that cyber security. It's in the news. It's going to be in the news. I tell my oldest grandson, who's 18 now, that, this security thing is going to be with you for the rest of your life. It's not going away as we become more digitized and that. So there's this need to protect voter rolls and registration and tallying of votes, kind of two different things. So how about talking about that cybersecurity aspect of, let's just say, protecting the rolls first?
Sure, and I think you're absolutely right. There's two separate pieces when we talk about cybersecurity. And when we talk about voter registration rolls, that's really what people are talking about when they talk about hacking elections.
Okay.
And so our voter registration roll is protected by King County's firewall, and we have both the local elections, the King County elections, and the local county voter registration databases. And then that information is also held at the Secretary of State's office as well as the official roll for Washington State. So the elections rolls aren't connected to any other county databases or information. Again, they're protected by King County's firewall. We're constantly monitoring and making sure that no one is hacking or accessing that information.
Now, what about if they would hack the Secretary of State and get in that way? Is there a conduit straight back into King County, or the other 38 counties?
No, those are actually separate. So we have our own iteration of our voter registration rolls, and of course we have backups of that information as well. And we have a really extremely dedicated and vigilant staff that are watching those spikes and those peaks in voter registrations, and we're watching where those IP addresses and where those voter registrations are coming from as well.
And you talked earlier about this, two people open it and they verify the signature and that. And my wife and I didn't pay attention to this. We get 2 ballots, we sit at the kitchen table, we're filling them out, we stick them in the envelope, we send it back in, and we didn't pay attention whose ballot went once. And that was caught. That was in Pierce County, but that's the type of...
Never happens.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
But I mean, that vote doesn't count. So.
It does count.
Oh, it does count.
It does count.
Okay.
And in King County, we're able to do what
Discern
we call...
that?
Yes, we can. It happens quite a bit.
Okay.
And so we call that a cross signature. And so we just need to make sure that we get both the signatures of the household, that both partners are husband and wife, and then we're able to count those ballots.
Okay. Now, do you inform them, like I got informed, that, hey, oops?
Yes, we'll absolutely inform our voters. Anytime we have any signature issue or concern with a voter, they're contacted to make sure that we've got the voter voting their ballot.
So the voter roll is kind of locked down pretty solid.
Right.
Then what about this tallying of votes? It's all vote by mail, but you have machines that you're feeding. What about the security of that electronic interface with that paper ballot?
With those tabulation system that's scanning ballots, therefore actually registering people's votes, is completely offline. It's on a closed network, and so there's no accessibility from online hacking. It is completely on a closed network, and that is actually secured at our facility in King County Elections. Those server rooms are accessible by both, again, a combination of badge and biometric, and there's only a small few individuals that have access to that room, and that is our senior staff. In fact, I don't even have access into that room.
I wouldn't let you in there either.
Okay.
Yeah, gotta know what you're doing.
Right,
I mean, that's
absolutely.
the thing, and that's pretty standard. Is
Absolutely.
only people with the need to know and the capability in that to do it. When you talk about that, it wasn't one of our questions, but a big issue with cybersecurity in general is the insider threat. So anything you're doing to make sure you got the right people, and when you terminate someone, sometimes you have to that would have had access. You're making special steps, that type of thing.
Absolutely. One of the audits that we did have was from the state auditor's office has a cybersecurity team. And so they actually verified and validated that we actually do make sure, unlike probably a lot of other organizations, that we immediately delete an individual from our systems once they have been let go or have left. And so we're absolutely doing that. But we're also able to, I think, which is so great about vote by mail, is we have paper ballots. No matter how you vote, if you get your ballot online or if you get it in the mail, we always have a paper trail. And so what we ensure is that we go back through and we do audits of our election, which is basically recounts, manual recounts, where we bring the ballots back out and we verify that the tabulation system is actually counting the votes as we intended them.
So when there's a recount, is it always manual, or would you do initial machine recount?
It depends on the actual number of votes that is the defining
For the office type
exactly.
of thing.
Then it could be a manual recount or a hand recount. But what we're doing is we're looking at the actual tabulation system before every election, during and after every election, doing the logic and accuracy test to make sure that that system's working correctly. And then we're also going back through and doing the manual audit. But we also have the responsibility to have 2 people with ballots and with the actual tabulation system. So one person themselves could not go into the system as well.
All right. And what about audits of the cybersecurity? You mentioned Secretary of State earlier. Is there a Department of Homeland Security? They did a physical audit. Was there a cyber audit of that?
Yeah, I'm really proud to say that King County was the first county to actually ask the Department of Homeland Security, after elections became a critical infrastructure. I asked the Department of Homeland Security to come in and look at our physical security and the actual protection of our ballots in our facility. And then I also was the first county in Washington State to ask the state auditor's office to do a cybersecurity audit, which they're still conducting. Of course, that is in conjunction with not only elections IT staff, but our county IT staff as well. And so we're learning a lot of great information. We're getting really great feedback, and of course are implementing any of the recommendations from both of those entities.
We've talked a lot about the Secretary of State in charge of statewide elections, but they don't conduct any elections. Explain their relationship. I don't think there's a chain of command, but you can explain that, between them and the 39 counties in the state.
Sure. So really the Secretary of State's responsibility is to provide guidance and direction for the 39 counties in regards to following election laws. So they can make sure that there's consistency between each of the counties. And they're, again, of course, the official keeper of the voter rolls. They also provide training for us election administrators as well. But as you said, it's really the 39 counties that are actually administering the operations of elections. We're doing the actual voter registration, candidate filing, designing and creating the actual ballot itself, mailing those ballots out to our voters, and then collecting those ballots back. We're running ballot drop-off locations, and we're actually the ones that are processing the votes. So they really provide kind of guidance so that we're got some consistency across the state and some training and support.
And when those ballots are picked up at the drop box, are there 2 people there picking them up?
At least 2 people, always. And they're immediately placed into bins that have seals on them. Everything we do, we seal up all of our boxes that have any sort of ballots in them.
Okay, and the winner is as they break the seal, right? You mentioned how many types of elections and that, but the other big number I always remember using a lot when I was a King County is how many locally elected officials there are in King County. How many are there?
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I have that number off the top of my head. It's hundreds.
It used to be 500.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably more than that now. So there's, 500 elections. They're all holding a position.
Absolutely, right? So I know we've had some really high candidate filing numbers in recent years of 500, 600 candidates filing for offices. But as you said, with 191 jurisdictions from school boards to water districts to port districts, legislators, council members, we have a lot of different positions that we're administering elections for.
Okay. And cities don't have an elections department. You're doing elections for everybody.
That's right. King County and Washington State, we run all of the elections for our jurisdictions.
One big question I have for you, I always I use the term benchmark. You know, how I have a sense for how well my organization is doing in comparison to others. Where would you put King County elections, this physical and cybersecurity, compared to other election systems, both in Washington State, we won't call out anybody, but and nationally? Where do you think we rank?
I'm not too shy to say that we're in the forefront. And it's not just me saying that, but you had a guest a little while back that is
the last show we did.
Dave Matthews, that
A cybersecurity expert.
who said great things about what King County Elections is doing.
Yeah.
We also are hearing that from the Department of Homeland Security as well as our state auditors. And so we're really at the forefront of election security. I think it shows with us wanting to have more eyes on our process with the different audits as well. We're really the leader in elections, a leader in inclusive elections, and we've been recognized at the county, state, and national level for the work that we're doing here.
Okay, we only have 2 minutes left. I got a bonus question for you.
Okay.
Because this is always an issue, is if there's an election scheduled and there's a disaster, the disaster happens. Real quick, we got less than 2 minutes left. How do you handle that?
Absolutely. So we have disaster plans. We have our continuous operations, of course, our COOP plans as well.
Which is continuity of operations.
Continuity, thank you. And we will also be actually testing those out with our local law enforcement. But in elections, what we've seen across the country is that elections aren't placed on hold.
Yeah.
So we still have to conduct business, and our office is prepared to do that. And so we have, of course, anything from generator to plans for how we would have to work in a different facility, if we'd have to go to a different elections office, and again, where our database is actually stored in private locations across the state, and we have those iterations of it.
So, I mean, I can tell you that I'm certainly not a cyber expert at all, but my organization, we do a cybersecurity workshop in conjunction with King County Office of Emergency Management and their Emergency Management Advisory Committee, and then we've also been working with the state of Idaho on cyber security. I mentioned earlier we had that cybersecurity panel in Spokane, and I tell you, far and above, you guys stand out as having a terrific system, and you're trying to do everything possible to ensure the security and safety of the position. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and the special treat, you get to keep this coffee
Yay,
mug as a memento.
Awesome.
And may none of your elections be disasters.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
And for you folks at home, this brings us to the end of our show for today. And thanks for tuning in and learning more about what you and others can do to become better prepared for disasters. We've learned a lot what King County Elections is doing. And remember, if you're going to get prepared, today is a good day to start. And don't forget to vote. Bye-bye.